Okay. A very good morning to everyone. Welcome guests, Prof. Liu Wun-Chia, Director NIE, Professor Nagendran Kandia from the Dementia Research Center in Singapore, LKC Medicine, Imelda, our third keynote speaker over here, friends, colleagues, and our community partners. This segment was actually left for our center director, Professor David Hung. Unfortunately, he very conveniently told me last week that he's going to Cambridge for another meeting, so you are going to see me twice today, one in a video just now, and this welcome speech, or this opening address. So I was sort of thinking around, okay, what can I talk about? Because I've never really given an opening address before, and David is usually very good at giving these opening addresses. So pardon me if I do stumble every now and then. It's a well-being conference anyways, right? So, okay. So this year, this is our second symposium that we're organizing. We had one in 2023 in which I think we saw some familiar faces back then, and we welcome you back again. For those of you who are new over here, welcome to NIE if you're here for the first time, and also welcome to the Science of Learning and Education Symposium. So what is the Science of Learning and Education Center? The SOLEC Center for short is really an interdisciplinary center that was sort of set up back in 2021, and this was back then identified as a strategic growth area by our former director, Prof. Christine Goh. As you can see over here, we do have, or at least at NIE, we do have our evergreen strengths that we focus on, but we also have our strategic growth areas that we are hoping to extend and expand into. And the Science of Learning and Education is one of those strengths, or one of those strategic growth areas. So what we have done, at least from 2020 to 2021, is to assemble a team that focuses on some of this interdisciplinary work within the science of learning to enhance our understanding of learning in the classrooms and in education. And what is the science of learning, right? So I think there's this big buzzword around what is science of learning? Science of learning is a very broad definition, right? And I've sort of put up a definition over here that was published by one of our colleagues and an assistant director within the center as well. It is really a holistic approach whereby interdisciplinary ideas can get together to really understand learning from a holistic lens. I mean, it sounds like a very big endeavor. It sounds very broad, but it's meant to be broad, and it's meant to be encompassing. Because learning is not just sitting in a classroom and taking in information. It is about who you are as a person, as a learner. It is about your environment that shapes your learning. It is about the content and context in which you learn. So therefore, in order for us to understand learning, truly understand learning, we need to look at it from a holistic point of view. So within SOLEC, or at least within the Science of Learning here at NIE, we focus or we collaborate with other researchers, not only just within, but also within NTU and of course across to our IHL partners. And we hope that after this symposium, that we can extend this to other community groups and even internationally abroad as well. So if you had the opportunity to actually go and see some of our facilities, this is something that you might see, right? So we have our center that's just down the corridor. If you're interested this afternoon to take a look, please hit up one of our staff members over here, the one that's dressed in maroon. I was told that it was not purple, it's maroon, so apparently I can't really differentiate the color very well. So go and ask any of the staff that's dressed in maroon. They'll be very much happy to show you around, right? This center was, like I've mentioned, established in 2021, and it's been growing steadily ever since. We started off with maybe a couple of research scientists and a couple of faculty that was pulled together from the other academic departments. And since then, we have grown steadily. We have now 4 faculties that are involved in our senior management group. We have 8 to 9 education research scientists that focus solely on education research, and we plan to expand this center more in the coming years. right? And of course, with this expansion, we hope to bring NIE and we hope to bring everyone here along with us. Our vision and mission is very clear. Our vision and mission, or at least our vision, is to be a leader in the science of learning sphere internationally. I think as Singaporeans, if you are local, you would know that there's a very colloquial term that we are very kiasu, right? So we are very scared to lose. But that shouldn't be our driving force, right? We want to exhibit excellence in our research so that people within the region, people within our community can come to us and collaborate with us and work with us to solve intricate problems. And the way that we can do this is through this interdisciplinary approach that we take that combines different fields like psychology, physiology and medicine, cognitive science, technology, and education, and neuroscience, of course, right? So a lot of people always assume that just because we study about learning, that we are an educational neuroscience center. I would say that we are not truly an education neuroscience center. We encompass all these broad fields of study that helps us understand learning from different lenses. All right? I think one of our key strengths over here is to be able to amalgamate all these different fields together so that we produce a truly unique outcome in a truly unique way of viewing learning. Our center itself focuses on 3 major strands that are pivotal for learning. We talk about regulation, and I think this is something that every one of us experience if you're a teacher in a classroom or if you're an educator in an institute of higher education. Regulation is an important part that we need to understand a lot more, particularly in certain groups of learners. Well-being, which is the focus of today's symposium, and you will hear from the experts in the field about the latest well-being research. I'm not really a well-being researcher per se, but a lot of the work that I do involves aspects of well-being. And lastly, of course, metacognition. All right, so these are the 3 research foci areas that the Science of Learning Education Center focuses on, with accompanying these 3 foci areas are 3 broad strands of work. So it has to involve a science of learning method and framework. It has to involve understanding bottlenecks in education. So whether be it low progress learners, whether be it a problem or an issue with bilingualism, whether it's an issue of numeracy, these are all areas of interest that we are keen on figuring out. And I think lastly, and perhaps most importantly, is how can we translate some of these findings into educational practices. A lot of times when we speak to practitioners that are on the ground, we understand that they want information and they are very hungry for information. But the sticking point is very often how do we translate experimental designs and experimental knowledge into practical, usable applications. So moving forward, a lot of the work that we will focus on will involve this translational aspect, which also means that we will be working very closely with our community partners and our stakeholders, with the Ministry of Education, and with our research partners as well. So we see ourselves as being a broker between experimental research, but also a translator into educational practices. Lastly, as what NIE Director mentioned earlier on, we cannot escape or we cannot deny that AI in this day and age is going to be an influencing factor in our learning. So we, at least again moving forward, our research strand, we have added or we have included now the study of artificial intelligence and how that affects our learning outcomes, and potentially also how we can leverage on the use of AI to improve self-regulated learning, metacognition, and potentially even well-being practices. Within the Science of Learning Education Center, this is the approach that we have taken so far over the last 4 years. We have envisioned that our work will be in transitions, whereby we focused, at least in the last 4 years, foundational research and experimental research, which again, I think this is something that we have built successfully. But then moving forward, in the next couple of years, in the next 3 or 4 years, we will be embarking on a phase whereby we want to translate our findings that we have gotten in the lab into the classrooms. This transition or translation into the classroom is important because research that is just done in a lab and doesn't translate into your application is really just kept within the 4 walls of the university. And it's the same for other fields as well, in healthcare, in medicine. You have translation from bench to bedside. It's the same for us as well. It's the same approach that we take. So as I've mentioned, from 2021, since the inception of SOLAC up to now, we acknowledge that the work that we do is still quite experimental in nature. But moving forward, the focus will then sort of shift, although we are still going to keep the experimental arm, the focus will shift towards implementation, translation of some of these scientific findings that we have. So how do we approach this then? How do we translate these findings? Apart from just doing research or as the core tenet of a research center, doing research is definitely one thing, but we also recognize that doing research is very timely and it's very costly. A lot of times, we have to wait very long for an outcome to happen. And in order for us to scale up or to translate some of our findings, we adopted a parallel strategy whereby we do research on one side, but we also do education of our research on the other arm as well. And this is done predominantly through our programs that we offer at NIE. So, for example, we have the Masters in Science of Learning, and I believe some of our ushers over here and some of our volunteers are from the Masters in Science of Learning. Can I see a show of hands, anyone who's a former graduate? At the back over there, we have a couple of our graduates. Welcome back again. Hope you're spreading the good word of Science of Learning in your practice. So we really have adopted this parallel strategy of doing research as one, but also educating the public about things like brain literacy, things like how we learn, things like well-being, right, and how that affects our learning outcomes. Apart from the Masters in Science of Learning program, we also have our minor in Science of Learning that's offered to undergraduates. And more recently, we have embarked on professional development programs as well. So we've been going out to schools, we've been going out to the community, we've been going to the Art Science Museum to spread the word. And I think by and large, we have received very positive responses from these communities. It's very often that we always get teachers or we get a school that want to run a professional development program for their students, for their teachers, to really understand about how the brain ticks or how, what's the latest research finding in terms of well-being, for example. So these are all key ways or key strategies in which we can enact science of learning, not just from a research point of view, but also from a translational point of view. Now, everyone's here for this symposium, and we have got a stellar lineup of keynote speakers and workshops for everybody. So I do encourage everyone to participate as much as you can. I know some of you might be busy and some of you might leave sort of halfway, but do stay around and do reflect on the three aspects that our director has mentioned, right? So see if you can make a collaboration with anyone over here. See if you can find a take-home finding. And what's the last one again? I forgot, there's one more. Insight. Yes. An idea that you will act on, right? So I better remember my boss says these three, right? Okay, so again, I think this symposium sort of wraps up or encompasses what we want to understand about well-being, whether it's physically, cognitively, and psychology. We have three of our keynote speakers over here. We have Professor Richard Davidson that will talk about brain mechanisms of happiness, resilience, compassion, and emotional balance. We have Professor Kandia over here from LKC Medicine that will talk about cerebrovascular health for optimal cognitive function in midlife. And lastly, we have our very own Dr. Imelda Carleon, who will talk about strategies for psychological well-being and resilience in schools. So we have three fantastic keynote speakers that are very practical and applied to this well-being symposium. But we also have our workshops as well that we hope that you guys can find your 3 takeaway ideas. Okay? So to end off this opening address, we also have one more slide. So again, if you're interested to participate in our professorial summit, this is going to happen on the 8th of October. If you guys are keen to come down again to speak to some of our professors, our esteemed professors, please do so. But if not, thank you very much for coming. Thank you for the organizing committee for organizing this fantastic day. And enjoy yourself, please. Thank you.